This book was written about 4 or 5 years ago, and the reason for that is that we see so many children are born daily, and when they grow up, at some time they start wondering what is going on with this world. They will have a lot of questions, and some of them wonder why they are not feeling as happy as they used to or as peaceful as they used to. And by the birth of my grandchildren, this book came through by explaining what happens to a soul when is embodied. I think is worth reviewing, and it really sheds light on each of our own divinity. So I hope that is as useful for each of us as I felt it when my pen was writing. Now, when we read this book, my recommendation to all of us is that just put yourself at that child. Forget about having a child. Let's review it as if every word is talking to us as a child. It starts like this. Jesus said, "Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as those." It all started as an idea in the mind of the parents to have a child, or the universal mind, collective mind, as some pregnancies seems to not be planned. There is a day or night on which our body is born. The first sound out of the infant's mouth is a loud cry. There are always a few people around, and in some cases many, who are witnessing this event. In all births, there is one thing in common, which is that each child cries at birth. Most have loved ones around who are excited about the birth, although a few do not have anybody. Some parents celebrate, and some in their confusion feel depressed and lost. At my birth, my parents were happy. They were also very afraid of handling a newborn. Their happiness was more out of relief, since after having a boy, they now had a girl. Now they were complete. My journey started as each person's does. After birth, I went home with my loving parents. I do not remember any of it. I was an empty vessel, a white canvas. I just was. I did not identify with anything, not even with the form that I was to identify with later on. There was no sense of the world and its contents, no recognition of any kind. At most, I might have been aware of vague movement around me. The eyes saw, the ears heard, but I was not that. The body cried if hungry or pain, but again I was not that. I cannot even say I was witnessing. I was not even conscious of that yet. All I was being and existence, which is Sat Chit. After my birth, my parents' work started as responsible parents. They tended to my body. I, on the other hand, was unaware of the world they had come to know. They were happy and ready to take care of my body as their child. My parents, like any other parents, little by little started to teach me what a child needs to learn. Like most parents, they had family, friends, and helpers to give them endless suggestions as to how they should go about raising a child. All along, they were unaware of my state of being, and I had no idea about their world. Here the universal misunderstanding began. My world was a world of awareness without cause or boundary. Theirs was a world of consciousness full of stories. Mine with immense subtlety, theirs with immense grossity. My world without any concept, theirs overflowing with concept and beliefs. Now this is every child. When I say mine, I really talking on behalf of every one of us. The world I was living in was allness and endless. Theirs shattered into pieces and divided to endless many. At that age, feeling of happiness and unhappiness did not exist for me. In other words, the duality. But many times a day, my parents thought that I was either happy or unhappy according to what they saw my body do. What they were not aware of was that I was not my body, or better said, I did not yet know that I had one. The smile came upon the body and the cry was expressed by the body as automatically as my body had grown in the womb. The body cried, but the cry did not affect the isness that I was. As we see here clearly, one is the inner world, that infinite, and one is the outer world that those around entertain. As I said before, the sleep would come upon the body was not by my will, as hunger would be felt in the body, but not in my awareness. I was in the body, but not conscious of it, nor was I conscious of the surrounding as others were. I was only awareness without boundary, isness without being this or that. My parents caressed my body, fed it, clothed it, loved it and washed it. They were happy to take care of their child as the body, or as somebody. My mother's full-time job was to look after this child. One day they thought that I looked like my mother, the next more like my father, but in truth I was formless. They were taking my body to be who I am. The I was unmoved. They also watched very carefully to see how my body was changing day to day. I, on the other hand, was not aware of its growth. I had nothing to do with it. I was not conscious of the body they were loving. It is strange that only the body is being noticed, even a stranger that is the fact that the body is not noticed by the one that occupies it as an infant. Now, as we go on, it becomes clear how each one of us started identifying with the body and the mind and leaving that home behind, that pure consciousness or Satchitananda. Days passed, followed by months, and as if waking from a deep sleep, I began to be aware of objects around me. I began to notice, to recognize my mother, but without a name or story about her. By this process, the subtle body or the mind was being formed, but it was empty. As the subtle body or the mind became more outlined, I became more conscious of the world of my parents. The witness was created, whereas in my prior state, there was no need of a witness. There was just being or beingness. Through the development of the subtle body and the witness, the thinker, as the first entity, was in motion. And then we became the entity. Through the development of the subtle body, which means mind, and the witness, the thinker as the first entity, which means I am, was in motion. Now the thinker, which emerged when the child became conscious of his body, even though it still has no idea what it all means. And the baby started to think. This is what happened in my life, and I have very little doubt that it happened to every one of us. This is the time that the child as pure awareness begins to leave home and little by little become more conscious of the world of his parents. As tragic as that looks, when we know this map, this happening, then it becomes so easy to direct the mind to more of its natural state, which is silence and stillness. The subtle body or the mind is just an idea, and it gets fed by all the ideas in the mind. So the subtle body or the mind is just an idea, and it gets fed by all the ideas in the mind of the parents, the environment, and so on. This way the vessel, means the heart, begins to be filled with concepts. Or we can say that the drawing is being formed on the pure canvas of existence. As this process takes place, now the vessel is connected in the new mind and feeds it the impression that it gathers. As the subtle body is being formed, some of the unconscious, that's important, some of the unconscious memories from the previous lives, those that had left an impression, also have a home in which to be renewed. That's why we sometimes say the child display some characteristic that the mother and father didn't have. That's just my opinion. Is because the tendencies from another lifetime find a place to relive it again. Now this process is very slow and goes on throughout the earthly life. And you can call it karma, you can call it just vasanas from other lifetimes, or impressions, or tendencies, or addictions. So here, not only the parents and the environment of this life fills the vessel, the heart center means that vessel is a symbolic of heart center. But through the subtle body or the mind, the old memories have also found lodging. I think each one of us have the right to know what happened to us. Because at different age, most people say, what happened? Where did I come from? What is going on? For me, it was very important to know why at young age I wasn't feeling well. I feel like through this writing, I found a relief for those years that this is what happens. Pure consciousness begins to be polluted with the duality. So we continue next to see what happens to the baby and how to remedy it, how to reverse this damage that the duality put on a child, on a newborn. Namaste.